Hey everybody, welcome back to Studio Zero, my home studio. This is Mr. Dennis. Today we are going to be talking about and learning how to do block lettering. This is going to be an introduction lesson to get ready to do perspective in lettering. So those two videos will be separate. This one will lead into that perspective lettering assignment. I have a great way to get that block lettering done first, so let's jump in. Okay, welcome to the demo on old school block letters. So what I've created here for you is a sheet that kind of shows how each block letter is formed. Every one of these is going to start with a full block or rectangle, and then we are going to decide what chunks to cut away to leave the letter that we want. So the shaded areas right here represent the areas that we are going to get rid of. I'm going to demonstrate a few of these just to give you a good idea of how this works. Also right now, if you are at home and you do not have access to this sheet, it would be a great time to screenshot this. So I'm going to start these off as basic blocks, and I'll demonstrate 2 or 3 letters just so you can get an idea, and then you can practice on your own. So if I start with that block right there, and I would like that to be a letter M. Easiest way is I'm going to cut a letter V and a letter M out of the bottom. So if I start to cut my letter V out of the top, and then I start to cut the M out of the bottom. Now I could get super technical and lay these lines all the way out to the top and whatnot and really get into typography. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm not going to get quite that technical because this is aimed at upper elementary or early middle school students. So if you look at that right there, I could now go back over my lines that I really want to keep and have my letter M. Pretty straightforward and simple. So I would erase this line, and we'd have our letter. Let's demonstrate another one. Let's go after the letter S. It's often the toughest one. So, again, I've started with my block, and now I'm going to start to think about what do I have to trim away to make that letter S. Well, the first 2 things I'm going to trim away are big chunks. So right here, I'm going to take that chunk out, and then I'm going to trim away right here. I'm going to take away that chunk. Now I've got something that starts to look like a 5 or a really blocky S. But to finish it up and make it really look like this S, I'm going to start to cut the corners off. With a lot of these, I'm going to be cutting corners off. So if I start to cut the corners off of this, we start to have something that looks more like a proper block S. I'm going to also add these 2 chunks on right here. Notice I'm doing this a little bit more freehand without a ruler or a straight edge. That's okay, especially when you're just getting used to learning how to form these letters. Now, once again, I'm going to go back over my lines that I'm keeping. So I can really see the letter S that I've created. And as you get more advanced at this, you can start to come up with ways to make these curved or add serifs to them, which are little blocks at the bottom and the top that kind of stick out in certain fonts. But you can do that kind of on your own. What letter should we do next? think I'm going to do the letter O. Because it can become so many different things, we're going to do the letter O, because that can become a D or a B or so many other things. So if I start off with my block right here, and I start to cut the chunk out of the middle, the opening. Now, to make this into an O, I simply cut the corners off. If I wanted it to be a letter D instead, I would only cut these two corners off and leave the remaining. If I wanted it to be a letter B suddenly, then I could actually divide this in half and keep these two openings while also taking a V out of this side to keep the letter B that I've created. Once again, I wouldn't cut these back corners off. I'd keep those. Now the great thing is, with this, I could cut this whole chunk off right here and suddenly make it a letter P. Or I could let this hole run all the way to the bottom, go ahead and get rid of this, and then suddenly I have a letter R. So a lot of these letters end up going together. The O, the P, the Q, the R, the D, even the G, end up building off of the same basic ideas, and that B included. So, whatever letters you need to try, now's the time to do it. Go get it. Okay, welcome to the demonstration on perspective letters. If you watched the last video about block letters, we formed some letters that look like this. And now, if you are wanting to do perspective with those, we can start to take some of the information that we learned in the perspective demonstrations to actually move forward and do these letters in perspective. So for example, letters are very much like our geometric shape that we made in one of the past videos. If you look at these, they're very much like a complex geometric shape. So if we place a vanishing point someplace near the middle, we can start to actually go from the corners of these with orthogonal lines to make these into letters in perspective. Now, one of the things that I've done for the sake of depth is the letters that I've created on this sheet so far have a variety of sizes. So some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. The larger ones are going to appear closer in the landscape, and the smaller ones are going to seem farther away. So let's go ahead and get started with our orthogonal lines. I'm going to start with this letter N first. I'm going to go around and just use that technique of yes, no, or yes, but. So on this corner right here, it's a yes. On this corner right here, again, it's a yes. On this inside corner, wow, that's a yes as well. And so is this one. And notice I'm creating my lines light, like I did before. As I move on, I won't draw my orthogonals all the way back because I don't want to have to erase all that stuff. But that comes with kind of building the skill and getting more confident at it. These two corners up here, I don't think I need either one of. So I've got my orthogonals laid out. Now I need to use my rule of parallel lines for the cutoffs. So parallel to this part of the N right here is going to be that cutoff right there. And parallel to that is going to lead me back up in between there. I'm going to firm up my orthogonal lines that I'm keeping. Now I have to go parallel to that, which is going to be tricky. Now one of the great things to look at is if these two lines right here on this N are straight across from each other, the cutoffs would be straight across from each other as well. That will help me get the angle of this cutoff line back here. Parallel to that would be that. And then parallel to this line, I'm just going to see a little sliver of the side of that N. Now, I could go through, start to do shading, as always, to help me really make those letters look 3D. Go really dark on this inner part right here. Go a little lighter on these. And we start to end up with a three-dimensional looking N. Now, I did this E on purpose. It's a little tricky. There's a lot of corners to look at, and all of the tines of the E are facing away from the vanishing point. So this E is going to be a little interesting. I'm going to start with this corner right here because it's an easy one, and then I'm going to come back to this one. It's a pretty big angle difference between this and that, but that's what it is because it's coming at us. When I start to go to these other corners, that one's a no, that one's a yes, but that one's a no, 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 yes, but it's going to run into the wall back here. That's a no, that's a no, that's a no. So as I start to do my cutoffs for these, I get to decide how deep is this letter going to be. And parallel to this line has to be this. I'm not going to make this letter too deep. I cut it off right about there. And then I have to decide, well, if that wall is that deep, well, how deep is that? I'm going to say it's right about here. You notice I'm not using my ruler. As you get better and better at this, you can draw with a little more confidence without your ruler, but that takes practice. So that depth right there, we're going to see maybe just a little cutoff on that one. So as you start to look at what I have left, I'm only seeing the inside of this, and the back of this. So there's really not that much that I have to do. From here, I am going to let you take over. I'm going to keep on working on mine, and hopefully you'll be able to do this as well.